So to further saturate our shadows, I think I want to build up a darker shadow color, but also something a bit more deliberate. So I'm going to take some more of this purple right here and some of that Rhine Oxide. We'll mix up that shadow color again. Come over here. We have a nice little base layer of our browns on my thumb. So let's see what this color actually looks like. Here we're still very, very purple. So I'm gonna add just a touch more of this Rhine Oxide. Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50-50 now. It's quite a dark color. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take our other paintbrush and we're gonna use it to kind of skillfully apply our shadows with a two-brush blend. Now, this technique is really cool. You're gonna probably hear me with my paintbrush in my mouth, but it's really necessary to push the paint around. So I'm just gonna take, for example, right here's a good spot that we would want some extra shadow depth. We'll put a bunch of paint down here. And take our other paintbrush. That's why these handles are so handy to have. So nice to leverage the grip for moments like that. Let's see here. Put a little line there. Gotta move pretty quick to catch these things before they dry and leave tide marks. Right there at the very edge, I left a tiny one. It came clean. We were lucky. Just gonna have to be mindful. A lot of times the weather has an impact on that. Apparently, that's just the weather we're dealing with today. We're just going back and forth here, trying to saturate our shadows in and at the same time use that second brush to smooth the transitions. So it doesn't look like we just slapped a dark line in there, which in reality is exactly what we've done. Purples look really nice in the shadows, especially with orange and yellow browns. Let's see if we can be finessed here. Just going to come at this from all angles and see if we can feather it out enough that it looks in place. I think it came out all right. We can leverage the same technique to help put other colors in as well. Sometimes I use it to blend when I'm putting in little tiny like highlights, or when I'm doing dark lining stages. It's really versatile. Up here we probably have a nice shadow as well. Down here where our shadows are, I think all this is going to do is further enhance them. So we'll do it. And anywhere I was sloppy, we'll just use that as a cleanup. This is just a darker version of what we were initially using. And anywhere in here where we had a feathered transition, we're just gonna make it a little bit smoother. Very good example of what we were dealing with before. We want to really saturate that shadow in the back. Yeah, that's really helping that. It'll help frame in the face as well. Push and paint around, you know. The thing I like about the wet blending and two brush blending techniques is they're so forgiving. You can kind of play around and have fun, and if you don't like the way something looks, as long as you're quick about it, you can just erase it. Snap the brush real quick. Like I said, just like we did with the shadows there, you can always take this color. Here we've got quite a bit more of that orange and yellow mix. Let's say, for instance, we really wanted to add a little something right in here. Feather that out. Just gonna push the paint around. What that does, in truth, is we're really making it into a bit of a glaze because there's water on the brush. And we go through to push it around. So we don't have to do it everywhere. We can just feather the edges, push and pull. Make sure we get the highlights where we want them. It's a way of really adding a ton of control to the piece. I'm not worrying too much about where these patches are because I know we're going to come back through and change them. And so if we were applying the paint to the recesses and then feathering it to push it further down in, we're just doing the opposite here and putting it up on the highlight, extending it a little bit too far. And then we're pushing it back, and just feathering that little transition. We're like pushing it in and pulling it back out of the where you want it. So like here, I have to come up from behind a little bit because I've overpainted it a little too much, but that's why I think it's so fun to paint this way because it's super, super forgiving. And where I'm at in my particular development, I think it's super beneficial to be using forgiving techniques. And here's a good way to demonstrate this. We're going to push into the paint and we're going to pull it away, but when I pull it back, just following where I want that highlight to be, which is right along there. And I have a little bit of the paint that's left in here. I'm just using it as a glaze to play around. Maybe some of the areas I think could use a little bit more. Now, though this color is not a highlight, it's our mid-tone, it looks pretty darn bright down here in where our shadows are the darkest. Because of the angle, I'm just kind of doing this backwards. I'm kind of pulling the base of the brush into the paint, pulling it back out. So it's like inverted, but it's the same concept. I don't like the coverage there just yet, so we're going to do exactly what we did before, but again, that should, it's just another layer. I think a little bit of that texturing we did initially has really helped keep things looking less uniform and more worn. Just another coat here as well, another layer. You do as much or as little of this as you like. I know this technique isn't for everybody, but for me, when I was starting out, one of the key things, a little Matt DiPietro shout out, talking about paint bravely. It's hard to be brave when you don't know how to be courageous. Well, techniques like this will help you be brave because you'll learn how to fix your mistakes easier and you can paint faster when you're not afraid of destroying the model. Incredible what you can accomplish. For me, that was one of my biggest hurdles. For sure. Alright, I think we've accomplished what we intended to accomplish by demonstrating this. The next step would be to build more highlights or further the shadows, whatever you're looking to get out of the piece. For this particular guy, I'm sure we'll be finishing the patches and demonstrating more on that, but for now, I think we've got the point across about doing some leather texture, also getting some nuanced colors in there. And we could also come back in and add a little bit extra with some two brush blendings of a finishing piece. So maybe we'll do that as some extra credit here in a few minutes. Alright, we're going to do the next stage here. Something that I don't think gets acknowledged enough about these Citadel contrast colors is how good they are at two brush blending as like quite a finishing piece, but for what they accomplish, they're super dense in pigment, and here I think is a really good time to kind of leverage some of that. So I'm just going to take some of this snakebite leather, and we're going to take a little bit of this Shyish purple, which is super dark. This thing is darn near black. And here I have 1:1, but let's see if that looks like first. It might be too dark. Googly moogly. How dark is that paint? Let's take a look at what we get. I might want to lighten that up, but I also might not. And so, if we look at where highlights and shadows are, let's take a little bit of this. I'm just going to two brush blend it in. And one of the properties of the contrast paints that makes them so popular is how pigment dense they are, but also while being so transparent. So we can really take and apply a very fine layer to our pieces and get a rather striking result with very little effort with these contrast paints. But it's not exactly as they're prescribed. Sorry about whipping a piece around a little bit there. Don't have very good handle grip. Something else, when you're not considering going through and hitting with a coat of varnish for like a gaming piece, and you're maybe just painting something to a nicer standard. Another thing about the contrast paints, they had like a really nice glossiness to them, so you can leverage that as a shadow as well. Shadow I've been trying to saturate the whole time. It's one of the first things I put in. Should probably just made it black and gotten it over with. Just not good enough about being that confident that early on with my pieces. I tend to need a little bit of few layers to get confident. See if I can dark line this with a beat up size 4. Nah, not in the cards. Get in there. Little bitty brush strokes. Not today, huh? Today, just slather paint where you like and push it away from where you don't want it. Okay. There we have it. I feel like the next step will be to actually highlight the letters, but I think we made our point. Worry about the highlights next.